The old warship UES Ironhold drifted at the edge of Kesh Outpost like a tired dog waiting by the door. It was one of the last ships of its kind. Built 40 years ago, back when humans were new to the stars, it had thick metal plates instead of smooth alien armor. Its guns were old too, heavy and slow, made for a war that Earth had almost lost. Most people on the station called it a museum piece. Some even joked that it should be melted down for scrap. Captain Daniel Reyes did not think it was a joke. He had served on the Ironhold for 11 years, and he loved every creaking wall and every rattling pipe. To him, the ship was not old, it was proven. It had survived battles that newer ships had not. It had brought its crew home every single time. That was worth more than shiny paint or fast engines. But not everyone agreed. And today, that disagreement was about to walk right onto his bridge. The alien ship came out of hyperspace without warning, a smooth black shape that looked like a blade cutting through space. It was easily 5 times the size of the Ironhold. Its hull had no rivets, no plates, no rust. It looked like it had been grown instead of built. Red lights blinked along its edges, calm and steady, like a predator that was not afraid of anything. "Sensors are picking up a Corvette Dominion cruiser," said Lieutenant Amara Chen from her station. Her voice was tight. "They are hailing us, Captain." Daniel stood up straighter. The Corvette Dominion was one of the oldest powers in this part of the galaxy. They had ships, weapons, and technology that made human ships look like toys. Earth had a shaky peace treaty with them, signed only 2 years ago after months of tense talks. Nobody wanted that peace to break. Not yet. Humanity was still too small, too new, too weak. "Put them through," Daniel said. The main screen flickered, then showed the face of an alien. He was tall, with gray skin and dark eyes that seemed to look straight through the camera. He wore a black uniform with silver marks on the shoulders, marks that showed high rank. Behind him stood other Corvette officers, all silent, all watching. "I am Grand Captain Vraxis Thold," the alien said. His voice was deep and slow, like he was speaking to a child. "I am here to inspect this outpost, as is our right under the treaty. I did not expect to find this." He said the word "this" while looking past the camera, as if staring straight at the Ironhold itself. Daniel kept his face calm. "Grand Captain Thold, welcome to Kesh Outpost. My ship, the UES Ironhold, is on routine patrol here. We have no objection to your inspection." Vraxis smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone enjoying a joke that only he understood. "Your ship," he repeated. "Tell me, Captain Reyes, is that truly a warship? Or is it a relic you tow around for good luck?" A few officers behind Vraxis laughed quietly. Daniel felt his jaw tighten, but he did not let his anger show. Anger was a weakness in front of an enemy, or even a wary ally. He had learned that lesson a long time ago. "It is a warship, Grand Captain," Daniel said simply. "It has served Earth well." "I am sure it has," Vraxis said, his tone dripping with amusement. "I would like to see it myself. Permission to board, under treaty rights of inspection." Daniel glanced at Amara, then back at the screen. He knew he could not refuse. The treaty gave the Dominion the right to inspect any station or ship near a shared border, as long as they gave proper notice. Refusing now would look like Earth had something to hide, and they didn't. Not really. Not that Daniel knew of. "Permission granted," Daniel said. "We will prepare a landing bay for your shuttle." The screen went dark. Daniel let out a slow breath. "Sir," Amara said quietly, "do we really want them walking around the ship? They already think we're a joke." "I know," Daniel said, "but saying no would make it worse. Let them look. Let them laugh if they want. We know what this ship has done. That's what matters." 20 minutes later, a sleek black shuttle docked in the Ironhold's landing bay. The bay doors, which groaned with age every time they opened, hissed and squeaked as they slid apart. Grand Captain Vraxis Thold stepped out first, followed by 2 guards and a smaller alien, with a scanning device strapped to his arm. The Corvette were tall, with long limbs and skin the color of wet stone. Their eyes had no white in them at all, just deep black pools that seemed to drink in the light. Daniel met them personally, standing at attention with Chief Engineer Elena Ruiz and Lieutenant Amara Chen at his sides. The bay smelled of oil and metal, a smell that Daniel had always found comforting. He wondered what it smelled like to the aliens. "Captain Reyes," Vraxis said, stepping onto the deck with slow, deliberate steps. He looked around the bay, at the pipes running along the ceiling, at the scratched metal floor, at the old warning signs painted by hand instead of printed with lights. "This is quaint." "Thank you, Grand Captain," Daniel said, choosing to hear the comment as a compliment, even though he knew it wasn't meant as one. Vraxis chuckled. "Show me your engine room. I am curious how a ship this old still manages to fly." Elena Ruiz stepped forward. She was a short woman, with strong arms, and grease permanently under her fingernails. She had been the Ironhold's chief engineer for 6 years, and she knew every wire and bolt on the ship better than she knew her own house. "This way, sir," she said, her voice steady. They walked through the ship's corridors, past crew members who stood at attention as the group passed. The Corvith guards looked around with open curiosity, sometimes whispering to each other in their own language. Vraxis said nothing, but his eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail, every scratch, every old repair patch welded onto the walls. When they reached the engine room, the air grew warmer, and the hum of machinery grew louder. The Ironhold's main reactor sat in the center of the room, a massive cylinder covered in pipes and cables, glowing faintly blue behind a thick window. It was an old design, a fusion reactor that had been updated many times over the decades but was, at its core, ancient technology compared to what the Dominion used. Vraxis studied the reactor for a long moment, then he turned to his engineer, who held up the scanning device and read something off its small screen. The engineer said a few words in their own language, and Vraxis's eyebrows rose slightly. "Your reactor," Vraxis said, turning back to Elena, "produces less power than the shuttle that brought me here. Is this correct?" Elena's cheeks flushed, but she kept her voice level. "It produces enough power for this ship, Grand Captain." "Enough power," Vraxis repeated, as if tasting the words. "I see." He walked slowly around the reactor, tapping the glass with one long finger. "Tell me, Captain Reyes, why does Earth still use ships like this? Surely you have newer designs by now." "We do," Daniel said. "But the Ironhold has a long record of service. It has earned its place in our fleet." "A long record," Vraxis said, and now his smile grew wider, showing sharp teeth. "Yes, I have read about your Ironhold. 40 years old, slower than a cargo hauler, weapons that could not scratch the paint on my cruiser. And yet you fly it around like it means something." The room went quiet. Daniel felt the eyes of his crew on him, waiting to see how he would respond. "It means something to us," Daniel said simply. Vraxis laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Sentiment. Humans are full of it. You keep old things because they remind you of the past, even when the past cannot help you in the future." He turned to look directly at Daniel. "Do you know why the Dominion respects Earth, Captain? It is not because of your ships. It is because you fought hard when you had nothing else. But nothing else is exactly what you still have. This ship is proof of that." Daniel kept his face still, though the words stung more than he wanted to admit. He glanced at Elena, whose hands had curled into fists at her sides, and at Amara, whose eyes burned with quiet anger. "Is there anything else you wish to inspect, Grand Captain?" Daniel asked, trying to steer the conversation away from insults. Vraxis waved a hand lazily. "No, I have seen enough." He turned to leave, his guards falling into step behind him. But then he paused at the door and looked back at the reactor one last time. "You should retire this ship, Captain, before it embarrasses you in front of someone less patient than me." With that, he walked out, his boots clicking against the metal floor. The Corvette shuttle undocked 10 minutes later and shot off into space, heading back toward its massive black cruiser. The engine room was silent for a long moment after they left. "Sir," Elena finally said, her voice trembling with anger. "That man just insulted every ship we've got." "I know," Daniel said quietly. "The Ironhold has been through 6 major battles," Amara added, her voice tight. "It saved the entire Kesh colony during the pirate raids 3 years ago. It's not junk." "I know that too," Daniel said. He rubbed a hand over his tired eyes. "But right now, being right doesn't matter. Being careful does. The Dominion outnumbers us in this system 20 to 1. We can't afford to make an enemy of a Grand Captain, no matter how much he deserves it." The crew slowly returned to their stations, muttering under their breath, some cursing softly in different languages. Daniel understood their anger. He felt it too. deep in his chest, a slow burning coal that refused to go out. But anger would not fix anything. Only patience would. He walked back to the bridge, passing familiar faces along the way, each one carrying the same tight, quiet fury. The Ironhold had always been more than metal and wires to its crew. It was a home, a family, and today, a stranger had walked into that home and called it worthless. Hours passed. The Dominion cruiser remained in orbit near Kesh Outpost, its black hull glinting under the distant sun. Daniel kept the Ironhold on standby, engines idle, weapons powered down but ready. He did not want any accidents, any misunderstandings that could be twisted into an excuse for conflict. It was near the end of his shift, just as he was preparing to hand command over to his second officer for the night cycle, that Elena Ruiz came running onto the bridge, her face pale and her eyes wide. "Captain," she said, breathless, "you need to see this, now." Daniel frowned. "What is it?" "The reactor," Elena said. It's not doing what it should be doing." "Explain," Daniel said, standing up immediately. Elena took a shaky breath. 20 minutes ago, I shut down the main fusion core for scheduled maintenance. Standard procedure. No power should be flowing to the engines right now. None. I checked it 3 times. "And?" Daniel asked, though a cold feeling was already creeping up his spine. "And the engines are still running," Elena said. "Full power, like nothing happened at all." The bridge fell silent. Every officer turned to look at her, then at each other, then at the captain. "That's not possible," Amara said slowly. "I know," Elena said, "but it's happening. I've checked every system twice. There is no power source feeding those engines, and yet they're running exactly like they should be. Better, actually. The output numbers they're higher than normal specs. Way higher." Daniel felt his heart begin to beat faster. He thought of Vraxis Thold's mocking smile, of his careless words about retiring the old ship, about how it could not help them in the future. He looked out the viewport at the black shape of the Dominion cruiser hanging silently in the darkness, and for the first time since the alien captain had boarded his ship, Daniel Reyes allowed himself a small, quiet smile. "Get me a full diagnostic," he said. "Every system, every reading. I want to know exactly what our old ship is doing right now." "Yes, sir," Elena said, already turning to run back toward engineering, her earlier fear replaced by something like wonder. Daniel sat back down in his chair, his mind racing. He did not know what was happening to his ship. He did not know why the engines were running without power, or how it was even possible. But he knew one thing for certain. Grand Captain Vraxis Thold had come aboard, expecting to find a relic. He might have found something else entirely. The engineering deck of the UES Ironhold buzzed with tense energy. Elena Ruiz stood in front of the main reactor console, her eyes locked on numbers that made no sense. Around her, 3 junior engineers worked at other stations, running test after test, hoping each new result would explain what the last one could not. "Run it again," Elena said, wiping sweat from her forehead even though the room was not particularly warm. "I've run it 6 times, Chief," said Petty Officer Mikhail Kowalski, one of her best technicians. "Same result every time. The main fusion core is offline, cold, completely shut down, just like you ordered for maintenance. But the engines are pulling full power. More than full power, actually. They're running at 112% of rated output." "That's impossible," Elena muttered, though she had said the same thing an hour ago, and the impossible thing was still happening. "I know it sounds impossible," Mikhail said, "but I'm looking right at it." Captain Daniel Reyes walked in with Lieutenant Amara Chen close behind him. He had asked for updates every 15 minutes since the strange readings first appeared, and each time the answer was the same. Engines running, no power source found. "Talk to me, Elena," Daniel said. Elena turned to face him, her hands still shaking slightly, though now it seemed more from excitement than fear. "Captain, I don't have an explanation yet, but I can tell you what I know. The main reactor is off. Backup batteries are at 98%, meaning they are not being drained. The auxiliary power cells are untouched. And yet, somehow, the engines are working. Not just working better than they ever have." "Better how?" Daniel asked. "Speed," Elena said. "I ran a simulation. If we engaged full thrust right now, with the numbers I'm seeing, this ship could outrun almost anything in the Dominion fleet. including that black cruiser sitting outside our window. Amara let out a small, surprised laugh. You're joking. I wish I was, Elena said. I don't understand it. None of us do. But it's real. Daniel walked closer to the reactor, staring through the thick glass at the cold, dark cylinder inside. Just hours ago, this exact machine had been mocked by an alien captain who called it weaker than his own shuttle. Now it sat silent, completely powered down, while somehow the ship around it hummed with more energy than it had ever produced before. Could this be sabotage? Daniel asked quietly. Something the Dominion did while they were aboard? Elena shook her head immediately. I thought of that first, sir. I checked every system they could have touched. Nothing was added. Nothing was changed. If anything, it looks like something inside the ship simply woke up. Woke up, Daniel repeated slowly. I know how that sounds, Elena said, but I don't have a better word for it. Daniel's mind went back to the ship's long history. The Ironhold had been built during the early years of Earth's expansion into space, a time when humanity had few allies and even fewer advanced technologies. Every system on the ship had been designed and built by human hands, using human science, without any outside help. It had been upgraded many times over the decades, patched, repaired, and modernized piece by piece. But at its core, it was still the same ship that had first launched 40 years ago. Elena, Daniel said slowly, I want you to pull up the ship's original construction records. Everything. Every blueprint, every design change, every system that was ever installed on this ship, even ones that were later removed or replaced. Elena blinked. That could take hours, sir. Some of those records are old. They might not even be digital. Do it anyway, Daniel said. I have a feeling we're missing something important. While Elena and her team began digging through decades of old records, Daniel returned to the bridge with Amara. The Dominion cruiser was still sitting quietly outside, unmoving, its red lights blinking in a slow, steady rhythm. Daniel wondered if Grand Captain Vraxis Thold was watching them right now, perhaps still smiling that mocking smile of his. Sir, Amara said as they walked, if the engines really are running without power, and if Elena's numbers are right about the speed, what does that mean for us? I don't know yet, Daniel admitted, but I know we need to keep this quiet until we understand it ourselves. If the Dominion finds out before we do, they might see it as a threat. Or worse, they might try to take it from us. Amara nodded slowly. Understood, sir. I'll make sure the crew keeps this contained. Back on the bridge, Daniel settled into his chair and stared at the calm stars outside the viewport. Kesh Outpost floated nearby, a small station with only a few hundred residents, mostly miners and traders, who had built a quiet life on the edge of human territory. It was not an important place, not strategically, not politically. It was the kind of place old ships like the Ironhold were sent to patrol, because nothing exciting ever happened there. Until today. Hours passed. Elena and her engineers worked through old records, some stored on modern computer systems, others on ancient paper files that had been scanned decades ago and forgotten in some digital archive. It was slow, tedious work, made harder by the fact that nobody knew exactly what they were looking for. Then, close to midnight ship time, Elena found something. She burst onto the bridge again, this time holding a data tablet tightly in both hands, her eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and excitement. Captain, she said, I think I found it. But you're not going to believe this. Try me, Daniel said, standing up. Elena set the tablet down on the main console and pulled up an old document, its edges worn and its text faded, clearly scanned from an original paper file decades old. The header read, Project Ember, Classified, Earth Defense Council. Project Ember, Daniel read aloud. I've never heard of this. Neither had I, Elena said. It was buried deep in the archive, filed under a project name that had nothing to do with ships or engines. I almost missed it completely. What is it? Amara asked, leaning in to look. According to this, Elena said, scrolling through the old document, back when the Ironhold was first being built, Earth scientists were working on an experimental power source. Something completely different from fusion reactors. The file calls it a zero-point energy core, something that could theoretically pull power directly from the fabric of space itself, without needing fuel or a traditional reactor. Daniel frowned. I thought that kind of technology was just theory. Something scientists talked about but never actually built. That's what I thought too, Elena said. But according to this file, a small prototype core was built and secretly installed inside 3 ships during the original construction phase, as a backup fail-safe system. The idea was that if the main reactor ever failed completely, in the middle of a battle or a crisis, this backup system could keep the ship's critical systems running long enough to escape or fight back. 3 ships, Daniel said slowly. Was the Ironhold one of them? Elena nodded, her expression somewhere between fear and wonder. The file doesn't say directly, because the ship names were redacted for security. But the timeline matches. The Ironhold was under construction during the exact window mentioned in this document. And there's something else. She scrolled further down the file. The project was shut down before it was finished. Elena continued. The scientists ran into safety concerns. The core was too unstable, too unpredictable to use reliably. Instead of removing it from the ships that already had it installed, because doing so was apparently too dangerous and expensive, they simply locked it down, deactivated, sealed away. And then the whole project was forgotten, buried under classified files, because Earth moved on to other technologies that worked better and were safer. The bridge went quiet as everyone absorbed what Elena had just said. So you're telling me, Daniel said slowly, that somewhere inside this ship there might be an experimental power core from 40 years ago, one that was locked away because it was too dangerous, and it just turned itself back on. That's exactly what I'm telling you, Elena said. Why now? Amara asked. Why would it activate after 40 years of sitting quiet? Elena hesitated. I don't know for certain, but I have a theory. When the Corvette engineer scanned our reactor during the inspection, his equipment was far more advanced than anything we use. It's possible that scans somehow triggered something, woke up a dormant system that had been sleeping since the ship was first built. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his mind spinning with the implications. If Elena was right, then somewhere deep inside the old, mocked, laughed-at warship, there existed a power source that Earth's own scientists had once believed could rewrite the rules of energy itself. A power source so advanced, so potentially dangerous, that it had been hidden away and forgotten. And it had just woken up, right under the nose of a Dominion captain who thought the Ironhold was nothing but scrap. Can we control it? Daniel asked. This core, whatever it is, can we turn it off if we need to? Elena shook her head slowly. I don't know yet, sir. The file doesn't include full technical schematics, probably because they were kept separate for security reasons, or maybe they were lost over the years. Right now, all I can tell you is that it's running, it's stable, and it's producing far more power than our engines even need. Keep studying it, Daniel said, quietly. I want to understand this before we do anything else. And Elena, make sure this information stays inside this room for now. Only essential personnel. Understood, sir, Elena said. As she left to return to engineering, Daniel remained on the bridge, staring out at the dark shape of the Corvette cruiser still parked nearby. He thought about Vraxis Thold's cold, mocking words. He thought about the old ship that had carried him and his crew through 6 major battles, a ship that alien captains dismissed as outdated junk. He thought about secrets that could sleep for 40 years, waiting for the right moment to wake up. Sir, Amara said quietly, breaking his thoughts. What do we do if the Dominion finds out about this? Daniel was silent for a long moment, watching the stars. I don't know, he finally admitted. But I have a feeling we're not going to have much choice in the matter. Something tells me this isn't over yet. Not even close. Outside, unseen by human sensors, a small stealth probe launched quietly from the underside of the Corvette cruiser, drifting silently toward the Ironhold. Grand Captain Vraxis Thold was not a man who trusted easily, and something about the old human ship had bothered him since the moment he boarded it. Call it instinct, or call it the sharp senses of a Dominion officer who had learned long ago to trust his gut. He wanted to know exactly what the humans were hiding, and he was about to find out that his mocking words had been far more wrong than he could have ever imagined. Grand Captain Vraxis Thold stood on the bridge of his cruiser, the Vengeful Tide, watching a small screen that showed data streaming in from the stealth probe he had launched hours ago. The probe was tiny, barely larger than a human hand, designed to slip past old sensor systems without being noticed. It had drifted close to the iron hold and attached itself quietly to the outer hull, listening, watching, gathering information that the humans did not know was being taken. "Report," Vraxis said to his sensor officer, a thin alien named Krissa who had served under him for nearly a decade. "Strange readings, Grand Captain," Krissa said, her voice careful. "The human ship's main reactor shows as completely powered down. Confirmed cold, no energy output whatsoever." "And yet?" Vraxis asked, already sensing there was more to the story. "And yet the ship's engines are running," Krissa said. "At full power. The probe's instruments actually recorded output levels higher than what should be physically possible for a reactor of that design, even if it were running." Vraxis leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes narrowing. "Explain that more clearly." "I cannot, Grand Captain," Krissa admitted. "The numbers do not match any known human technology. They barely match anything in our own database. Whatever is powering that ship right now, it is not the reactor we scanned earlier today." Vraxis was silent for a long moment, his long fingers tapping slowly against the armrest of his command chair. He had spent nearly 30 years in the Dominion fleet, inspecting outposts, negotiating treaties, and occasionally fighting battles against enemies both weak and strong. In all that time, he had developed a sharp instinct for danger, an instinct that rarely failed him. And right now, that instinct was screaming at him. "Show me the readings again," he said. Krissa pulled up the data on the main screen. Lines of energy output stretched across the display, spiking higher and higher in a pattern that made no logical sense according to known physics. Whatever was happening inside that old human warship, it was not something the Dominion had ever encountered before. "This could be a trick," said Commander Doss, Vraxis's second-in-command, standing nearby with his arms crossed. "Humans are known for clever tricks. Perhaps they wish to make their old ship appear more dangerous than it is, to discourage further inspection." "Perhaps," Vraxis said slowly. "But tricks do not usually come with real energy readings like this. If it were fake, our instruments would detect the deception. This is real power, Commander. Real and unexplained." He remembered standing in that dusty old engine room just hours earlier, mocking Captain Reyes and his tired, outdated ship. He remembered the flash of anger in the engineer's eyes, the quiet dignity in the captain's voice as he defended his vessel. At the time, Vraxis had found it almost amusing, the way humans clung to their old, weak technology out of pride, rather than practicality. Now, a small seed of doubt had planted itself in his mind, and it was growing quickly into something far more serious. "Grand Captain," Krissa said. "Orders?" Vraxis thought for a long moment. As a Dominion officer, his duty was clear. Report anything unusual immediately to Dominion Command, and wait for further instructions before taking any independent action. That was the proper procedure, the safe procedure. But Vraxis had not risen to the rank of Grand Captain by always following safe procedures. "Recall the probe," he said finally, quietly. "I do not want the humans to know we have been watching them." "And then, Grand Captain?" Vraxis stood up from his chair, walking slowly toward the viewport that looked out at the small, aging shape of the Ironhold floating peacefully in the darkness of space. "Then we will pay Captain Reyes another visit," Vraxis said. "Only this time, I will not be so polite." Back aboard the Ironhold, Daniel Reyes had barely managed to close his eyes for a short rest when Amara's voice crackled urgently over his personal comm. "Captain, you need to get to the bridge, now." Daniel was up and moving within seconds, pulling on his uniform jacket as he hurried through the familiar corridors of his ship. When he arrived on the bridge, he found the crew tense, eyes fixed on the main view screen. "What's happening?" he asked. "The Dominion cruiser is moving," Amara said. "They just powered up their main engines and weapons systems. No communication, no warning." Daniel's stomach tightened. "Are they attacking?" "Not yet," Amara said. "But they're closing distance. Fast." Daniel sat down in his command chair, his mind racing. Only hours ago, Grand Captain Vraxis Thold had left this very ship with a mocking smile on his face, treating the Ironhold like nothing more than a joke. Now his cruiser was powering up for what looked like an attack. "Hail them," Daniel ordered. "I want to know what they think they're doing." A moment later, the screen flickered to life, showing Vraxis Thold's cold, calm face once again. This time, there was no smile. "Captain Reyes," Vraxis said, I have reason to believe your ship is hiding technology that violates the terms of our treaty. Specifically, an unregistered and potentially dangerous power source. I am ordering a full search and seizure of your vessel, effective immediately. Daniel felt a chill run through him, but he kept his voice steady. Grand Captain, our treaty does not give the Dominion authority to seize Earth vessels without clear evidence of a violation. We have not broken any agreement. You will forgive me if I do not simply take your word for it, Vraxis said coldly. My sensors detected an unexplained and unregistered energy source aboard your ship. That alone is grounds for a full inspection under Section 12 of our treaty. Prepare to be boarded, Captain, or face the consequences of resisting a lawful Dominion order. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Daniel knew that Section 12 did exist, buried in the fine print of a treaty that had been negotiated under pressure, back when Earth had far less bargaining power than the Dominion. Refusing outright could be seen as a treaty violation, giving the Dominion an excuse for far worse action than a simple inspection. But allowing them to search the ship now, with Project Ember's secret energy core active and unexplained even to Daniel's own crew, felt like an enormous risk. Grand Captain, Daniel said carefully, we are willing to cooperate with a proper, formal inspection, conducted according to treaty procedures, with representatives from Earth Defense Council present. But I cannot allow an armed boarding party to storm my ship without cause. Vraxis's eyes narrowed. That sounds very much like a refusal, Captain. It is a request for proper procedure, Daniel said firmly. Nothing more. For a long, tense moment, Vraxis said nothing, his dark eyes studying Daniel through the screen, as if trying to read his very thoughts. Then he leaned back slightly, and a small, cold smile returned to his face. Very well, Captain Reyes. We will do this the proper way, since you insist on it. His smile widened slightly. But know this. My cruiser will remain in weapons-ready status until this matter is resolved. And if I discover, through proper channels or otherwise, that you have concealed forbidden technology from the Dominion, there will be consequences far greater than a simple seizure of your ship. The screen went dark. Daniel let out a long breath, running a hand through his hair. Well, he said quietly, that bought us some time. Not much, but some. Sir, Amara said, what do we do now? Daniel turned to look at her, then at the rest of the tense bridge crew. Get me Elena on comm. I need to know everything she's learned about that power core, right now. And I need to know if there's any way we can shut it down before the Dominion forces their way in here anyway. A few minutes later, Elena's voice came through, slightly out of breath, as if she had been running through the ship's corridors. Captain, I heard what happened. I've been trying everything I can think of to access the core's controls, but it's like nothing I've ever seen. There don't seem to be any external controls at all. No switches, no shutdown sequence, nothing. It's like the system was designed to run completely on its own, without any way for the crew to interfere with it. That's not exactly reassuring, Daniel muttered. There's something else, Captain, Elena said, her voice dropping lower. I managed to access some deeper system logs. It looks like the core isn't just powering the engines anymore. It's spreading. Slowly, but it's spreading into other ship systems, weapons, shields. Even life support is showing efficiency increases we can't explain. Daniel's eyes widened slightly. Are you saying our entire ship is being upgraded, all on its own? That's exactly what I'm saying, Elena said. And Captain, if this keeps going at the rate I'm seeing, within a few hours, this old warship might not be the weakest ship in this system anymore. Daniel looked out at the black shape of the vengeful tide, still sitting there, weapons ready, waiting for any excuse to strike. He thought about Vraxis Thold's cold threats, about the treaty that barely protected Earth from a stronger, more advanced enemy. How many hours, exactly? Daniel asked quietly. I don't know for certain, Elena admitted. But Captain, whatever is happening inside this ship, I don't think it's finished yet. I think this is just the beginning. Daniel sat back in his chair, staring at the mocking black cruiser outside his window, and for the first time since this entire strange ordeal began, he allowed himself to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, the old, laughed-at Ironhold still had a few surprises left to show the galaxy. 6 hours passed, and the tension around Kesh Outpost grew thicker with every minute. The vengeful tide remained in its threatening position, weapon systems humming quietly but visibly ready to fire. Aboard the Ironhold, Daniel Reyes had not left the bridge once, watching the alien cruiser like a man watching a snake that had not yet decided whether to strike. Elena Ruiz arrived on the bridge just after the 6th-hour mark, her face pale, but her eyes bright with something between fear and disbelief. "Captain," she said, "you need to come see this yourself." Daniel followed her down to engineering, where the mood had shifted from confusion to something closer to awe. The engineering team stood around the main reactor console, staring at readings that scrolled faster than any human eye could easily follow. "Talk to me," Daniel said. "The core has stabilized," Elena said. "It's not spreading uncontrolled anymore. It's like it finished whatever process it was going through, and now it's settled into a steady state. But Captain, the numbers now, they're staggering." She pulled up a display showing the ship's current system status. Shield strength had increased by nearly 300%. Weapons power output had more than doubled. Engine efficiency, already impossibly high hours ago, had climbed even further. "This ship," Elena said slowly, "right now, in this exact moment, could probably go toe-to-toe with that Dominion cruiser and actually stand a chance." Daniel stared at the numbers, his mind struggling to accept what he was seeing. Hours ago, this same ship had been called scrap by an alien captain who believed it could not even scratch the paint of his own vessel. Now it seemed to be something else entirely, something none of them fully understood yet. "Can we trust these readings?" Daniel asked. "Is there any chance this is some kind of malfunction, feeding us false numbers?" "I asked myself the same question," Elena said. "So I ran a live test. Small scale, nothing dangerous. I redirected a tiny amount of power through the point defense turrets, just to see the response time and output." She tapped a button, and a short video clip played on the screen, showing one of the ship's small defense guns firing a test shot at a harmless debris fragment nearby. The shot moved faster than Daniel had ever seen from that weapon, striking the target and vaporizing it instantly. "That," Elena said quietly, "used to take 3 shots to destroy something that size. It just did it in 1, using less power than a single old shot required." Daniel let out a slow breath. "All right, I believe you." Before he could say anything else, Amara's voice came urgently over the comm system. "Captain, you need to get back to the bridge. The Dominion cruiser is hailing us again, and they don't sound happy." Daniel hurried back to the bridge, Elena close behind him. When he sat down in his chair, the main screen was already flickering with Vraxis Thold's image, his expression cold and impatient. "Captain Reyes," Vraxis said without any greeting, "my patience has run out. Dominion Command has reviewed the sensor data collected earlier. They agree that your ship shows signs of possessing forbidden technology. I have been given clearance to proceed with immediate seizure, with force if necessary." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Grand Captain, we have not violated any agreement. What you detected is still under investigation on our end as well. We are willing to share information through proper diplomatic channels, but I will not allow your forces to board my ship by force." "You misunderstand your position, Captain," Vraxis said coldly. "This is not a negotiation. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded, or I will be forced to disable your ship myself." Daniel exchanged a quick glance with Amara, who gave a small, tense nod, silently confirming that the Ironhold's shields and weapons were as ready as they could be, given everything that had happened. "Grand Captain," Daniel said, choosing his words carefully, "I would strongly advise against that course of action." Vraxis's eyes narrowed, clearly surprised by the sudden confidence in Daniel's voice. "Are you threatening me, Captain Reyes?" "I am simply giving you fair warning," Daniel said, "just as you did for us earlier." For a moment, Vraxis said nothing, studying Daniel's calm expression through the screen. Then his patience finally broke. "Very well. If you wish to test my resolve, Captain, I will oblige you." The screen went dark, and almost immediately, the Vengeful Tide's weapons systems flared to life, bright energy building along its hull. "Brace for impact!" Daniel shouted. "Raise shields to maximum. Divert all available power to defense." The Ironhold's crew scrambled into action, years of training kicking in, despite the fear evident on many faces. Elena, still on the bridge, watched the power readings with wide eyes as the ship's new capabilities responded instantly to the crew's commands, shields rising faster and stronger than anything the old systems had ever produced before. The Vengeful Tide fired first, a massive beam of energy lancing across the space between the two ships, aimed directly at the Ironhold's hull. Daniel gripped the armrests of his chair, expecting devastating damage. Instead, the shields held. Not just held, but barely flickered under the impact, the energy from the attack dispersing harmlessly across the Ironhold's newly strengthened defenses. A stunned silence fell over the bridge for just a moment, before Amara let out a small, disbelieving laugh. "Shields at 96%, Captain. That attack should have taken us down to critical levels." On the view screen, though the Dominion had cut communications, Daniel could imagine the shock on Vraxis Thold's face as his sensors reported the failed attack. "Return fire," Daniel ordered, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "Target their weapon systems. I don't want to destroy them if we don't have to. Just disable their ability to keep attacking us." "Aye, Captain," said the weapons officer, a young man named Petty Officer Zane Okafor, his hands moving quickly across his console. Firing main batteries. The Ironhold's old, outdated guns, the same ones Vraxis had mocked as being unable to scratch his cruiser's paint, fired with a power and precision that surprised even the crew operating them. Bright bolts of energy streaked across space, striking the Vengeful Tide's weapons array with pinpoint accuracy, causing bright flashes of secondary explosions along its hull. "Direct hits," Zane called out. "Their forward weapon systems are down." The bridge erupted in stunned, disbelieving cheers, quickly hushed by Daniel's raised hand. "Stay focused," he said. "This isn't over yet." On the main screen, the Dominion cruiser shuddered visibly from the impact, its previously smooth, confident movements now sluggish and uncertain. A few tense minutes passed as both ships remained still, neither firing again, the silence stretching out like a held breath. Then, finally, the comm system crackled back to life, and Vraxis Thold's face reappeared, no longer calm and mocking, but tense and clearly shaken. "Captain Reyes," he said slowly, "explain yourself. That ship should not have been capable of resisting my attack, let alone disabling my weapon system so effectively." Daniel allowed himself a small, tired smile. "I did warn you, Grand Captain." Vraxis's eyes narrowed, studying Daniel carefully, clearly recalculating everything he thought he knew about the old human warship and its captain. "What exactly is powering your ship, Captain? My sensors detected no active reactor before, and yet you fought as though your vessel had far greater capability than we assessed." Daniel considered his next words carefully. He knew that revealing too much about Project Ember and its mysterious energy core could be dangerous, giving the Dominion knowledge they could use against Earth in the future. But he also knew that continued conflict here, in this tense standoff, could escalate into something far worse for both sides. "Grand Captain," Daniel said slowly, "our ship carries technology that even we do not fully understand yet. It was not intended to be a weapon against your people. It activated on its own, without any action from us, shortly after your engineer scanned our reactor during your inspection earlier today." Vraxis's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing his usually controlled features. "You are suggesting our own scan triggered this?" "It's possible," Daniel said. "We are still investigating ourselves. But Grand Captain, I give you my word. Earth had no intention of hiding a weapon from the Dominion, nor did we intend for this situation to escalate into conflict. What has happened here today was as much a surprise to us as it clearly was to you." For a long, tense moment, Vraxis said nothing, clearly weighing Daniel's words against the damage his own ship had just suffered. Finally, he let out a slow breath, some of the earlier coldness fading from his expression, replaced by something more thoughtful, more cautious. "Very well, Captain Reyes," Vraxis said. "I will withdraw my forces for now, pending a full report to Dominion Command. But know this matter is far from resolved. Whatever technology your ship now carries, it will be of great interest to my superiors, one way or another." The screen went dark once more, and slowly, cautiously, the Vengeful Tide began to pull away from Kesh Outpost, its damaged weapon systems trailing small wisps of vented gas as it retreated into the darkness of space. A long, collective breath of relief passed through the Ironhold's bridge crew. Amara turned to Daniel, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and disbelief. "We actually did it," she said quietly. "We beat them." Daniel nodded slowly, though his mind was already racing ahead to the challenges that still awaited them. "For now," he said, "but Elena is right. This isn't finished. Not by a long way." He looked around at his crew, at the exhausted but proud faces surrounding him. and then out at the empty space, where the Dominion cruiser had been just moments before. The old warship UES Ironhold, once mocked as a relic, once dismissed as scrap by an alien captain, who believed strength could only be measured in size and shine, had just done something no one, not even its own crew, had believed possible hours earlier. It had stood its ground against a superior enemy, and it had won. But as Daniel well knew, winning one battle was very different from winning the war that might now be quietly beginning, far beyond the edges of Kesh Outpost, in the halls of Dominion Command itself. 3 weeks passed since the standoff at Kesh Outpost, and the story of the old warship that had stood against a Dominion cruiser had spread quickly through Earth's scattered colonies and stations. Some called it luck, some called it a miracle. Daniel Reyes simply called it Project Ember, though even now, weeks later, he and his crew still did not fully understand the strange power that had awakened inside their ship. The Ironhold had been ordered back to Earth Defense Council headquarters for a full and thorough investigation. Daniel stood now in a quiet briefing room, facing a table of serious, tired-looking officials and scientists, all of them staring at reports about a technology that had been buried and forgotten for 40 years. "Captain Reyes," said Director Sarah Whitfield, the head of Earth's Defense Science Division, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Your engineers' reports are remarkable, to say the least. According to her findings, your ship's power core has not only stabilized, but it appears to be slowly integrating itself deeper into every major system aboard the Ironhold." "That matches what we've observed, ma'am," Daniel said. "Chief Engineer Ruiz can go into greater technical detail, but from a practical standpoint, our ship's capabilities have increased significantly since that day at Kesh Outpost. Shields, weapons, engines, even life support efficiency." "And you still have no direct control over this system?" Whitfield asked. "None," Daniel admitted. "It seems to operate entirely on its own logic. We can monitor it, study it, even benefit from it. But we cannot command it directly, at least not yet." Whitfield exchanged a glance with the scientist seated beside her, a thin, nervous man named Dr. Aldous Kane, who had been assigned to lead the technical investigation into Project Ember's rediscovered technology. "Dr. Kane," Whitfield said, "what is your assessment?" Kane cleared his throat nervously before speaking. "From what we've gathered so far, the original Project Ember scientists were far closer to a breakthrough than anyone realized. The core installed in the Ironhold appears to be drawing energy directly from quantum vacuum fluctuations, essentially pulling usable power from empty space itself. It's a concept many scientists theorized about decades ago, but no one, not on Earth, and as far as we know, not anywhere else in known space, ever successfully built a stable version of this technology." "Until now," Daniel said quietly. "Until now," Kane agreed, "and it seems the scan performed by the Dominion engineer, using far more advanced equipment than we possess, somehow interacted with the dormant core in a way that triggered its activation. We believe their scanning technology essentially provided the final piece of information or energy needed to stabilize a system that had been sitting dormant, incomplete, for 40 years. Whitfield leaned back in her chair, considering this information carefully. In simple terms, the Dominion's own arrogance, their assumption that scanning an old human ship posed no risk, accidentally gave us access to technology beyond anything they currently possess themselves. That does appear to be the case, Director, Kane said. A heavy silence settled over the room as everyone considered the implications of what had happened. Daniel thought back to Grand Captain Vraxis Thold's mocking words in that engine room weeks ago, his cold dismissal of the Ironhold as nothing more than an outdated relic, unworthy of respect. What happens now? Daniel asked. Whitfield straightened in her chair, her expression turning serious and focused. Now, Captain, we proceed very carefully. Dr. Kane's team will continue studying the technology aboard your ship, hoping to understand it well enough to potentially replicate it safely in the future. In the meantime, the Ironhold will remain under close observation, but it will also remain your command, and it will continue serving Earth's defense forces. And the Dominion? Daniel asked. What about Grand Captain Thold and his superiors? Whitfield's expression hardened slightly. Formal diplomatic channels have been engaged. The Dominion government has lodged an official complaint regarding what they call an unregistered and dangerous power source aboard your vessel. However, Earth's ambassadors have countered by pointing out that their own forces initiated an unlawful attack against your ship without sufficient cause, a clear violation of our treaty's terms. So it's become a diplomatic standoff, Daniel said. For now, Whitfield said. But Captain, I want to be very clear with you. What happened at Kesh Outpost has changed how the Dominion, and likely other powers watching closely, view Earth's capabilities. We have spent decades being seen as the newest, weakest species in known space, tolerated more than respected. That perception may finally be starting to shift. Daniel considered her words carefully. With respect, Director, I'd rather earn respect through cooperation than fear. Whitfield allowed herself a small, tired smile. A noble sentiment, Captain, and one I happen to share. But you and I both know that in the wider galaxy, respect often follows strength first, and understanding second. Perhaps, with time, we can find a way to build both. 2 months later, the UES Ironhold once again found itself patrolling near Kesh Outpost, its familiar corridors humming quietly with the strange, steady energy that had become simply another part of daily life aboard the old ship. Elena Ruiz had grown far more comfortable working alongside the mysterious power core, learning its patterns and behaviors, even if she still could not fully explain how it worked. Daniel stood on the bridge, watching the calm stars outside, when Amara approached with a small, knowing smile on her face. "Captain," she said, "we're receiving a hail. You're not going to believe who it is." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Try me." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the familiar gray-skinned face of Grand Captain Vraxis Thold, though his expression now held none of the mocking arrogance from their first meeting. Instead, there was something more careful there, more measured, perhaps even a touch of grudging respect. "Captain Reyes," Vraxis said, "I find myself in your system once again, this time under considerably different circumstances. My superiors have requested that I extend a formal diplomatic overture, seeking further discussion regarding recent events and their implications for our future treaty terms." Daniel kept his expression calm, though inwardly he felt a small flicker of satisfaction at the alien captain's changed tone. "Grand Captain," he said, "Earth is always willing to engage in fair and honest diplomacy." Vraxis paused for a moment, his dark eyes studying Daniel carefully through the screen. "Captain, I owe you an acknowledgement. When I first boarded your vessel, I judged it, and by extension your people, based solely on appearances. Your ship's age, its outdated design, its lack of the smooth, advanced technology my own people favor. I believed such things made it weak." "And now?" Daniel asked. "Now," Vraxis said slowly, "I understand that strength is not always visible on the surface. Sometimes it hides quietly, waiting, until the moment it is truly needed." He paused again, then added, with just the faintest hint of something almost like respect in his voice, "Your ship, Captain Reyes, and your crew, have earned my attention. That is not something I offer lightly." Daniel allowed himself a small, genuine smile. "Thank you, Grand Captain. Though I should tell you, this ship has always deserved respect. It simply took the right moment for everyone else to see it." Vraxis studied him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod, something almost like understanding passing between the two very different men, across the vast gulf of space and culture that separated their peoples. "Perhaps, Captain," Vraxis said, "there is more to learn from your people than my Dominion first believed. I look forward to our continued discussions." The screen went dark, and Daniel leaned back in his chair, letting out a long, slow breath. Around him, the crew of the Ironhold continued their quiet work, the familiar hum of the ship's systems steady and strong beneath their feet. "So," Amara said, walking up beside him, "does this mean the mockery is officially over?" Daniel chuckled softly, glancing around at the old familiar walls of his ship, the same walls that had once been called scrap by a proud alien captain who believed size and shine were the only true measures of strength. "I think," Daniel said quietly, "our old ship has earned the right to a little peace and quiet, at least for now." Outside, the stars continued their slow, silent dance, indifferent to the small victories and struggles of the beings who lived beneath them. But aboard the UES Ironhold, something had changed. A forgotten piece of human ingenuity, hidden away for 40 long years, had finally found its moment to shine, proving that sometimes the oldest, most overlooked things carry the greatest strength within them, waiting patiently for the world to notice. And as the Ironhold continued its quiet patrol along the edge of human territory, its crew could not help but feel a quiet, growing pride, not just in their ship, but in what it represented. Earth was still young among the stars, still small compared to the great powers that surrounded it. But it was no longer a species to be mocked and dismissed without a second thought. It was a species that, even in its oldest, most overlooked warship, still had the power to surprise the galaxy. And that, Daniel thought, watching the stars drift peacefully outside his window, was a very good beginning indeed.